Welcome back. This is episode 3 of our 11-part explainer series, diving into Breeze Dong's incredible book, A Soulful Transition, Finding Heart-Led Career in the Age of AI. Today, we're moving past the information diets and getting right down to clearing out the identity clutter from our lives. Let's take just a second here. Seriously, soften your gaze, take a deep exhale, and let's chew on a massive question. What if you could care deeply about your work without completely losing your soul in the process? I mean, how do we actually untangle who we are from what we do every day? We're passionate, right? We want to care. But man, we desperately want to stop being completely consumed by it. We need a way to show up and lead that doesn't require handing over our souls. Section 1. Meet the company man. So, let's dive right in by looking at a character you might just recognize in the mirror. We'll call them the company man, or the company woman. This is the person who wears their professional identity literally like a second skin.
You know the company man, right? They're the ones bringing up Q3 deliverables at Thanksgiving dinner, totally missing the glazed over looks from their relatives. And when a project hits a snag, they don't just see a normal work problem. No, they feel this deep internal wobble, like their actual personal safety is under threat. It's exhausting. And why? Because they're trying to uphold an absolutely impossible law of physics, trying to be the fuel, the engine, and the road all at the exact same time. It's a lonely, draining way to live, playing the isolated hero fighting a solitary battle.
And this is exactly the shift we need to make. We've got to ditch this myth of the isolated hero and start looking through a systemic lens. The isolated hero takes everything personally. A project fails? Oh, I didn't push hard enough. Team arguing? I must be a terrible manager. But stepping back and using a systemic lens, you suddenly realize, wait, I'm not an island. We're all part of this massive web of relationships, and companies have their own hidden currents. So instead of absorbing all the symptoms yourself, you start to see the invisible architecture of your workplace. You know that tight feeling in your chest during a meeting? Actually, it might not even be your anxiety. It might literally be the systemic anxiety of an organization that's just unsure of its direction. Which brings us to Section 2, Navigating the AI Fog. And what's really fascinating here is how the modern workplace is making this shift even harder than it used to be. Look, we hear it all the time now. We're an agile organization. Or, hey, we don't have bosses, we have circles. And throw generative AI into the mix. Those flat hierarchies are suddenly everywhere. AI democratizes information, and all those old gatekeepers and visible org charts just kind of dissolve. It sounds incredibly liberating, doesn't it? But actually, it creates what the author calls systemic fog. Inside this fog, everyone's anxiety goes through the roof because it's completely unclear who stands where or who actually calls the shots. The visible map vanishes, leaving behind this messy, invisible human order that is super tricky to navigate. So here's the absolute crucial takeaway. Yes, AI can simulate competence. Honestly, it can sound exactly like a seasoned expert. But it has absolutely zero place in the human system. It has no tenure. It carries no personal risk whatsoever. It's just a tool. And elevating a tool above actual human intuition, that just breeds chaos because we lose sight of the human order. In this super fluid, high-speed world we're working in now, knowing how to spot that human order is pretty much your best internal compass. Section 3, the formula for sanity. So, how do we find our footing in all this fog? Well, the author tosses us a brilliant lifeline, straight from the world of systemic coaching. It's a way to engage with your work where you're fully impactful but internally free. Think of it as a literal formula for your sanity. Love equals seeing plus space minus judgment. Now I know, using the word love in a corporate explainer might feel a little out there, right? But we're not talking about romance here. We're talking about a full-body, whole self capacity to just be present with reality exactly as it is right now. It's how we gently retire that company man without a huge fight. Okay, let's break that down. The first part is seeing. The company man is usually obsessed with what should be rather than seeing what is. So, seeing means acknowledging those hidden currents by checking 3 things. First up, place. Are you playing your right size? Remember, you're the VP of product, not the literal savior of the entire company. Second is belonging. You have to recognize that everyone, and yes, even every past failure, belongs to the system. You can't just pretend the toxic or difficult parts of your culture don't exist. And third, exchange. Are things balanced? Look, if you're working every weekend and destroying your health, the exchange is totally out of whack. Then we add space. And honestly, for those of us with big hearts, this is the toughest part. We tend to think caring means merging entirely with a problem. But think about a firefighter for a second. They care intensely about saving lives, right? but they maintain professional distance, they wear protective gear, and they keep a cool head so they can actually see the way out. Or think of the Taoist empty boat story. If a boat drifts into yours and it's empty, you just steer around it, no big deal. But if there's a person steering it, suddenly you're reacting, you get angry. When you identify too closely with your role, you become the reactive person in the boat. We all need space. Finally, we subtract judgment, meaning we have to stop resisting reality. Our inner company man is always running this background script like, this is so wrong, or they have no idea what they're doing. But resisting like that, it totally leaks your vitality. It is literally like trying to drive a car with the parking brake pulled all the way up. Once we drop the judgment, we stop being a simple thermometer that just reacts to how hot the room is. Instead, we become a thermostat. We observe reality as it is, we regulate the temperature, and we become true conscious professionals. Section 4. Your systemic hygiene checks. Now, it's one thing to nod along to this logically, but it's a whole different ballgame when you're completely wiped out on a Thursday afternoon. So, to help keep you grounded, the author gives us 3 practical hygiene checks to run when things feel off. First up is the overfunctioning check. You know the vibe. You feel like you're working way harder than everyone else, and you're starting to get pretty resentful about it. The shift here? Step back. Just focus on your specific piece of the puzzle. It's funny, but sometimes when we finally stop doing everyone else's job for them, we actually give them the space they need to step up and do it themselves. Next, we have the parenting check. Let me ask you, are you feeling emotionally responsible for your team's happiness? Do you get a pit in your stomach when they're stressed? The shift here is treating them like the adults they are. Respect their dignity enough to let them carry their own weight. Honestly, telling them the hard truth, like say a budget got slashed, is way more respectful than trying to shield them from reality like they're little kids. And the third one is the exclusion check. This is when you realize you're totally dodging a tough conversation or tiptoeing around a glaring problem. The fix is simple though. Yeah, I know, not always easy. You have to gently acknowledge the elephant in the room. Bringing a difficult issue back out into the open is often the absolute only way to get that stuck energy flowing through the system again. Section 5, the tabletop reset. To wrap up today's explainer, I want to share a really cool hands-on exercise from the workbook. It might sound a little bit playful, but you'd be surprised how often our hands can figure out what our overthinking brains completely miss. It's called the tabletop reset. Try this. Clear a little spot on your desk and grab a few small objects to represent the big players. We need one for you, your boss, the project, and the problem. Seriously, grab salt shakers, coins, sticky notes, whatever's handy. First, map out the current reality by just intuitively dropping them on the table. Look at it. Where are you standing in relation to the problem? Are you blocking the project? Is your boss crowding your space? Then, make an adjustment. Physically move your object to a stronger, clearer position on the desk. It's wild, but just changing the physical setup can totally shift your perspective and how you feel about the whole situation. As you practice finding your proper place this week, keep this mantra in your back pocket. I am in this system, but I am not of it. I take my right place, and I leave the rest. Just let that sink in. You can care deeply, truly deeply, about your work, while knowing for a fact that your essential worth is entirely untouched by its outcome. And honestly, that right there is true freedom. So, I want to leave you with this final thought. You've spent way too much time trying to keep the world spinning by burning yourself up as fuel. How can you step out of that AI fog tomorrow, take back your actual identity, do some really meaningful work, and then just go home and rest? Are you ready to take your right place? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next chapter.